Prior to the 1940s, movies generally had a lighter mood and tended to express fake realities. However, during the World War II era, we see a darker, more real genre of film break out, known as noir. This is caused in part by the outbreak of women wanting a different, more influential role in society that offered more options than just being a stay-at-home mother. Scott Snyder best explains this in his article, Personality Disorder and the Film Noir Femme Fatale, where he states, quote, "Film noir was associated with this period in a manner that reflected the new role of women in American culture. This new woman was forced to assert herself in ways that our society had not previously sanctioned." End quote. Because this new woman hadn't been sanctioned by the public yet, she was the rebel, and so as such needed to be vilified. Therefore, these films were generally harsher and didn't always have a happy ending, partly caused by this cynical new role for women. They tended to be independent and powerful, at the same time manipulative and greedy, which was, in most cases, directed heavily towards the protagonist, who normally is controlled for her bidding. In film noirs, this woman is known as a femme fatale. Snyder later explains that femme fatales showed that women, quote, could be just as sexual voracious and potentially murderous as any man, and just as susceptible for corruption and greed. One of the most classic representations of this is in the film Double Indemnity, which was released in 1944 and directed by Billy Wilder. The main star was Barbara Stanwyck, who played the character Phyllis Dietrichson. Through her depiction as this independent, powerful woman in Double Indemnity, Phyllis is able to embody the classic femme fatale who uses seduction as a magnet, pulling Walter, the anti-hero, into her corrupt plans, allowing her to manipulate him for her own profit. One of these primary moments where Phyllis is cemented as a femme fatale takes place on the staircase.
My name is Neff, Walter Neff.
If you're selling something...
Look, it's Mr. Dietrichson I want to talk to, and it's not magazine subscription.
Listen, Mr. Dietrichson is not in.
How soon do you expect him?
He'll be home when he gets here, if that's any help.
Before, when Walter was talking to her mother, he was very stern and was strictly talking business. However, when Phyllis enters, Walter's face immediately lights up and he gets a loss for words a few times.
What is it, Nettie? Who is it? It's for Mr. Dietrichson. I'm Mrs. Dietrichson. What is it?
How do you do, Mrs. Dietrichson? I'm Walter Neff, Pacific All Risk.
Pacific All what?
The Pacific All Risk Insurance Company. It's about some renewals on the automobiles. I've been trying to contact your husband for the past 2 weeks, but he's never in his office.
Is there anything I can do?
The insurance ran out on the 15th. I'd hate to think of you having a smashed fender or something while you're not fully covered.
Not only does Phyllis take a position of power on top of the stairs, but her whole body is lit up in bright lighting, all establishing an interest for Phyllis if you're Walter. Regarding femme fatales, Scott Snyder feels that, quote, authors have viewed them as energized, intelligent, powerful, and able to elicit strength from their sexuality, end quote. We'll discuss intelligence later on, but let's go back to lighting. Besides the first meeting that was focusing on Walter's attraction, the house is clearly dark, especially compared to the bright, happy street in the previous shot. These shadows are enhanced as Phyllis gets dressed and Walter ventures into the living room. Put best by Alan Silver and James Yersini in Film Noir Reading. Quote, the mood of tragedy is enhanced by a strong contrast of deep blacks and glaring whites. Lighting with its ups and downs becomes a symphonic construction paralleling the dramatic sequences, end quote. Wilder wants to clearly set up the poor decisions that will eventually be made in that house. This idea is enhanced in the scene as Phyllis comes downstairs.
Close. Without that silly staircase between us.
I wasn't long, was I?
Here we can see her going back to that seduction, as she only finishes buttoning up her shirt when she gets to the bottom of the stairs, pulling in Walter. But we can also see a dark foreshadow again with the shot of her anklet. Notice how the bars on the railing almost give off a cage-like hairbringer expressing that Phyllis's attraction will trap Walter. If we continue the clip, Phyllis says something as she looks in the mirror.
I wasn't long, was I?
Not at all, Mrs. Dietrichson.
Hope I've got my face on straight.
Perfect for my money.
By saying this, Phyllis gives off a very fake persona, as if she hopes her normal self isn't showing. It's a stretch, but it becomes more clear in their following interaction in the living room.
That's fine with me.
You're not connected with the Automobile Club, are you?
No, the all risk, Mrs. Dietrichson. Why?
Somebody from the Automobile Club has been trying to get him. Did they have a better rate?
If your husband's a member.
No, he isn't.
Well, then he'd have to join the club and pay the membership fee to start with. I never knocked the other fellow's merchandise, Mrs. Dietrichson.
Here we can see Phyllis act charming and enticing while face to face with Walter as they make small talk. However, when insurance comes up, she begins to pace back and forth with her back turned. Out of Walter's view, her face drops the innocent emotion, and it's a little scary because the audience can actually see the corrupt accident insurance plans begin to form in her head as shadows fall on her face. Through lighting, camera angles, body language, and dialogue, this scene alone captures both Walter falling in love with Phyllis's power and independence, and Phyllis already plotting how she will use him for her wrongdoings. Because of scenes like this, Double Indemnity hit it big as a classic noir, and in turn had a lasting influence for generations. Also, allowed films to even create their own spins on these classic traits, especially the Femme Fatale. Let's take a look at the popular 1999 film Fight Club, directed by David Fincher. For a good portion of the movie, it really seems like Marla is embodying the femme fatale role as she is a seductive woman and appeals heavily to our protagonist, Edward Norton. They also met at a cancer support meeting, and being that she has nothing to do with cancer, seems pretty sketchy. Later on, however, the audience realizes Marla turns out to be pretty good-hearted, and didn't have nearly as much manipulation on Norton as did Tyler Durden. He's nothing an audience expects a femme fatale to look like, but everything the role should play. Just instead of a love attraction, there's an envy attraction. Durden has Norton in the palm of his hand, and one could have predicted Norton's downfall at the end through the use of these femme fatale traits through Tyler Durden. Fincher also uses the similar contrast of light to describe moods, and the darker the moments, the more Norton fell into Durden's trap.
Gentlemen, welcome to Fight Club.
This downfall of our protagonist in Fight Club ties well back into Double Indemnity. Really, the only difference between the two films is the time period. While being manipulated by a woman you loved hit close to home to viewers in the 40s, being betrayed by the guy you envied and wanted to be so badly simply connected to viewers from the 90s. As time progressed, so did the role of the femme fatale, and we only have Double Indemnity to thank. One could even go as far as crediting the seemingly simple stair scene. The scene that captured the inevitable demise of the oblivious Walter Neff as he just gravitates towards the powerful yet rotten Phyllis, also known as the femme fatale.